We just had 2 engineers that have been here a year and 2 years out of school each, and they both left this month to go back home. Young single guys, right? And they come here for a bit from, one's Wisconsin, one's east side of the state, but they come here out of college for a bit. They love it, but they got a family, they got a girl, whatever, and they go, right? So there's reasons, of course, to recruit farther away, but there's also reasons to recruit people who want to stay for a long time. So,
what is the specialized talent?
So when we interview, it's the desire to solve problems and not stop till it's fixed is what we really look for. I will teach you the technology. Whatever they taught you in college is probably irrelevant to us exactly, right? But the ability to solve problems and stick with it and bring tools and gather other people and communicate and not stop until you have the answer is the part I can't teach.
So you said something interesting to me, because one of the things that I think we've all said it is that the way that they're teaching kids about manufacturing and engineering, especially in the community colleges or even in four-year universities, is a little dated. So what are your thoughts on like how to update that curriculum and get kids caught up so that when they do come here, you're not doing a lot of the teaching?
Yeah, so it's, I'll have a counter thought here, to be honest with you. I don't care what you learn on. If you learn on a PLC 2 generations old, or you learn on a CAD system 2 generations old, you've learned the thinking process.
Gotcha.
So, but many universities do get caught up in having the latest thing because they're trying to teach the skill I need.
Okay.
But I don't need you to teach the skill. I'll teach you the exact technology because it changed 2 months ago. Gotcha. So the universities chasing that is kind of a waste. They need to be relevant, right? But they don't need to be chasing that latest technology. They need to be teaching sound core practices, problem solving, communications, those kind of things. And then the project-based business, for my business, the project-based learning in that senior year, the schools that do that are priceless for me because it just teaches you that you're going to get stuck and you're going to have to rely on other people, which is foreign to an engineer. For 3 years, I've been given this exact thing, solve this problem, and I'll give you a grade if you get it right or not. Yeah. You go to project-based business or project-based curriculum, it's not like that. There's no exact definition. You get to even make your own definition on a lot of it, but you got to convince other people you have the right idea, and it's a different problem to solve. So that's the universities we like, the ones that are project-based in that last year. Yeah, co-op is just that on steroids, right?
I mean, like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because
You have one Kettering student?
Grad.
One Kettering grad?
Kettering, yeah. Yeah, Kettering's good, right? They're just, they're usually spoken for.
Yeah.
Right, so Grand Valley, we have a nice rotation. They've had a system for a long time, and we actually helped them with that JR originally, with that rotation over the last 3 years, and that just gets them everything. And they learn also, if they don't like this kind of place, there's many other roles for engineers that aren't project-based, intense like this is, right? So
to the point about project-based learning, that's what's so pretty cool about FIRST Robotics as well. Is that these kids, when they develop their teams and their strategy for, you have a problem. The problem is the game. And you're allowed to solve that problem however you want. It's going to come down to you and your team to decide what's the best solution for that problem. But also, they're developing their own control that you have on the team. You have the controls people, you have the marketing people, you have the build team, you have the design team. And that's just like, and then sometimes they even have project managers like the team captain. And that's just how these businesses run in automation and system integrators is project managers, controls engineers, mechanical engineers, and then marketing. So it's pretty cool when you dive down to that level of what FIRST is as an organization. And that's starting, like we all like to talk about, starting young. And they may not realize it, but if we can get them to realize it or get them to keep following through with that skill set, it'll help them when they get to
there's a type of personality, a type of person who excels at that, and there's a type of people who do not enjoy that. And to be able to sort that out earlier in your life is okay. It's actually good, right? So it's not even just work, it's not even just system integrators. I think the education system is hard to figure out early on where you should go, and they shouldn't maybe even do that, right? But they should be exposed to things and excel at different areas.
There's so much pressure for kids, I feel
Yeah.
like, to grow up and
Yeah.
know what you're wanting to do by the time you're a freshman.
Yeah.
And it can be
Well, once you're a senior, you should have it nailed, like, no, like senior year, you are leaving that school nailed down, or you are not going to succeed as life, is the stigma.
It is. No, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True at all.
You better
Yeah.
leave
It
that
is.
last counselor session
Yeah.
for your grad.
It's that guidance counselor.
You're a failure and you're
Yeah.
done.
And why is it that everyone in this room understands that that's not the case, but that's all you hear leaving college, right?
because I was that person.
Same, because we lived experience, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, if I don't go to college and get a degree, then I will fail miserably and never
Sure.
make anything
So-
of myself.
I'm just wondering when that message trickles down to like current college students, where it's like, hey, it's okay. Like if you don't know it today, like one of the reasons I love having an engineering degree is I could do anything after
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? Like that's kind of, it opens up a lot of doors, whether it's engineering or not. Like no podcasting wasn't even a thing when I graduated. So
I think what's cool as well is, I mean, we do see a shift, and I talked with Josh for like, Josh.
Josh.
I know Josh for like an extra like 10 minutes if you guys left, but it's so cool because like he's literally the exact same shoes. Like he was hired his sophomore year, going into his junior year.
Yep.
I was from his sophomore year, going to my junior year. But what's really cool about it is he says, I don't want to be an engineer. I'm going to go to GRCC and get an apprentice and become a machinist. And I'm like,
That's amazing.
perfect. For me, that was not an option. Like, if
Yeah.
you wanted to go into manufacturing and I went
Yeah.
to Granville, they said, you have 5 options. You have Purdue, Michigan,
Yeah.
Michigan State, Kettering, or GVSU. Like, that's your options. The apprentice program was never even mentioned to me. So when
Yeah.
you look at it, took a generation,
Yeah.
almost,
Yeah.
but we do see that shift now
Yeah.
where they're fully aware of, I can be a part of this industry and I don't need to
Without going to
I don't
four
need to
year,
go
yeah.
to a 4-year degree and spend money that might not
Right.
Yeah.
reflect on what I need.
Yeah,
Make it
to
more
add to that, we
acceptable.
partner with Career Line Tech Center. So
Yeah, good.
Josh goes to Career Line Tech Center. We have another student, Caden, who's at Career Line Tech Center. It's the trade tech center here in West Michigan, and they have robotics programs, machining, mechatronics programs, and so we'll have tours, we'll have kind of learning days here where we bring in students from Career Line Tech Center. We get to know the curriculum planners there. In fact, some of our functional managers are on the board to help determine the curriculum there, to say, hey, look I have a successful job, my family's great, like life is good, and I did not go to college, and here's the path, and here's a lot of paths that are in manufacturing that, one, don't require necessarily a degree. If you want to go and be an engineer, yes, you might need to go to school, but that's a choice, and that's not the only successful option there. So we're trying to work with the younger generations, and again, that is high school already. So
Yeah.
one thing we do too is have like Hamilton 7th graders. We always have them.
Yep.
Next week we've got another group of 7th graders, just to say like,
Yeah, busloads of
even
kids
for
here.
writers, we talk
Yeah.
about writing too, because
Yeah.
that's something that is huge in our industry
Yeah.
that nobody talks about.
Right.
Is softer skills
such
that
a
are
huge need for
required
it.
in manufacturing.
Can I ask you something? I'm sorry.
Yep.
So we just talked about this a lot, that manufacturers have to do a ton of work to attract the next generation. We've got to come in early. We've got to buck against the fact that even counselors still sometimes don't
Yeah.
really encourage folks to pursue these paths. You all are really clearly doing the work. How are you getting out your story? Because what you're saying now, is this what everybody sees when they're applying for a job, or what you're...
Yeah, and I don't think it's not a secret, but again, I think that how far you need to cast that net was asked earlier, right? I think it's a story and you have to tell it, and it's hard to tell in a broad sense because it requires layers, right? To get to the root of that, to get to the fact of that you can say it's your guidance counselor in high school problem. You can't start with that. You'll be shunned, right? But you can get there, and everybody will get to that point if you lead them through this conversation like that, right? So it's what seems obvious from sitting here in 10 minutes. It's hard to just say, but it is the correct conclusion. It is obvious. People do get it, and it is changing, I think. Not fast enough, and then, right.
And the one thing to add on what Scott's saying is, like, I wish we could do a case study on what's happening here in West Michigan when it comes to the impact of manufacturing, because like you're not going to find, like, not just industrial robots, you won't find a higher density of first robotics teams anywhere in the U.S. Maybe on the east side of the state, but more than that than here in West Michigan. Like you've literally had a culture built on manufacturing here more than anywhere else, and not just manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing, the future of manufacturing. There's no more, there's like, take Mission for example, when you walk through, you see the floor here. Now imagine there's 25 other companies, some bigger, some smaller, within a 50-mile radius of here. Like
there is.
Right
Yeah,
here.
there is.
I mean, you'll never find that anywhere else in the U.S. Maybe in some small niches, but the only reason this has happened and the reason this is successful is because the educational program, like, has allowed us to succeed in that area. Like, you wouldn't, if Grand Valley and Kettering and GRCC and Lake Superior and Michigan Tech and all that, if they didn't have the output, this wouldn't be possible. Because, like, another LinkedIn post. How many of your employees at Mission Design have gone to a educational, who grew up in Michigan, went to a thing here or there, and the only reason why Mission Design, when they were a customer of mine, when it was 12 employees, to now Mission Design, who's 100 and whatever, is possible is because, not because you hired them, because the talent was available in that area to begin with.
Yeah, so right, Dean Kamen's got the same. How do you influence more people, right? How do you get your message out, right? It's one of your questions originally too, right? But Dean's carrying the flag. He wants technology people to be cool, just like the other jocks are in high school. He doesn't beat around the bush, right? That's his exact objective. It should be as cool to be a technical geek as it is to be a jock. Just a different way of trying to say there's many definitions of success. And I think that's how we get successful here and why we carry our message a certain way is I don't need you to be exactly this or exactly that. I need you to be on the team, fired up, working hard, and taking care of yourself, your customers, and your teammates around you, right? It's a basic recipe, and if you keep it that simple, it does flourish, and people like it, and they enjoy that, right? But it's hard. You can't do that globally through a LinkedIn message, right? It's a very much a one-on-one and a story built upon layers of conversations, and then when you're interviewing, or if you're a high school kid, when you're walking around, you see it in each person in different ways, right? You don't get one guy just tells you believe it. If so, you might be called an imposter, right? That's the word I'm supposed to work in also. No, really.
Well played, sir.
I'm coachable. Sammy knows. No, I think right as you guys want to be influenced, I'll just bring us into a little bit of these candid conversations that I think are important, and you guys are trying to have this weekend, right? So not so much about mission or about even our industry maybe, but hopefully in regards to our industry, right? I think we need more influence. We need more influence about positive things in different ways, not just the negatives, right? So this is important also because quite often, even if the guidance counselor is saying, well, if you don't want to be an engineer, you could do this probably. Right away, you've already taken that level of success for that person down a notch. Right?
Not everybody is meant for college. It doesn't mean
Right.
you're not cut out.
Yeah.
Funny story, I just had to take a Rockwell test on PLC program to get my integrator certification.
Yeah.
Here I am, however old I am, apparently I'm the oldest person. I teach Allen Bradley PLC programming, and I still, at this age, cannot, I almost failed that test. I was not capable of doing that part, and if somebody had told me, hey, you're not cut out for a university, but there's a great trade school over here. You love to work with your hands.
Yeah.
I'd have been, I spent a decade really lost thinking that, I was just dumb and didn't know how to get through college.
Yeah, and then you feel like a failure and then you settled for something less than you could have been instead of being really successful, right? So you need to feed that success recipe to be, right? That's influence. It's what it is, right? You're trying to get people to believe they can do something. You want them to do more of this, less of that. Think this way, don't think that way. Right? This is a definition of influence, right? So you pick your poison, how you're going to apply that, but philosophically, you're trying to get people to feel a certain way about something, right? So I think that's an important starting point, right, for getting kind of candid, because I always, like, I'm an engineer, I would ref at First Robotics and tell, look, I'm an engineer, I read the rule book and I read the definition of the words, right? So I went and looked up influence. What is an influencer? It's the root of influence, right? You look it up and it's essentially that, right? And I think it's something when you guys try to wonder what you should be doing, how you can do your jobs better together and individually, you have to understand what you're trying to do, right? So that's the first thing up on the board there. So let's just throw it on the table and kick it around a bit, right? If you want to have influence, you have to decide who you want to influence, right? What you want the influence to be, more of this, less of this, don't do this, positive, negative, however you want it, right? And I think what you want to do is why are you doing it? And then to maximize that influence, you need to talk about, are you influencing a big audience, a small audience, a big impact on a small audience, a smaller impact on a big audience? That's my opinion of those variables, and maybe you wrestle with that individually. Maybe you're just even thinking now you should be asking those questions, but I think it's an important way of going about, I want to do this, I like it, I believe I'm good at it, right? People like me and they follow me and they listen to me, they ask me questions, cool. What should I do more of? What should I do less of? Where should I do it, right? Because time's up there, because time's the only thing we have, and where we choose to spend it, right? So you want to maximize your time as an influencer, okay? What does it mean, right? So think about it a bit. So that's just topic on the table. I don't have answers because it's your gig, but I think those are the questions you should be wrestling with. And then you, of course, get into the details of how you're going to apply it. But in my mind, those are some important questions you should be asking, and maybe, you take a piece of paper out tonight and write it down. And then think about it and write it down again tomorrow, right? While you're talking, and it will help formulate this time, perhaps, right? I'm just throwing it out there as a way to get here. You're spending time here for 3 days trying to get better at what? Right?
You lead this technology company
Yeah.
here in manufacturing. Who do you think needs to be influenced right now in the manufacturing world? I think about this a lot of times in terms of, hey, we do a lot of podcasts and events and content, and I feel like a lot of the technology providers and, like, let's say that circle within the industrial world are consuming it. I don't know if enough end users are consuming it. Like, that's one thing that crosses my mind all the time. I'm curious who you feel needs to be influenced and brought into this more modern world of manufacturing.
So by the numbers, is it? So I can't get a clear answer in my head. Sammy can tell I've been wrestling for a bit. Where is the right place to influence people, and what's the definition of manufacturing? It's the last item up there, right? Mm-hmm. Is it the people on the shop floor, and I want more people to come because there's a work shortage, or I want their lives better? Do I want the people who run manufacturing companies to be influenced differently, or do I want the people supplying automation to supply different automation? It was a philosophical question I don't know how to answer directly for you, because I'm wrestling even which way of those is the most bang for your time. It's cool to play it. I want to do Industry 4.0, I want to do robots, okay, but maybe there's a hell of a lot more influence in the high school guidance counselors. Mm-hmm. Maybe, right? That's why I don't have a good answer for you, Chris. I'm seriously wondering. But then again, the answer to the first question up there for you guys should be some of that. Yeah. It's around your passion or your talents or your background. And maybe you don't need to go tackle a big one if you're really good at tackling something that you're already engaged in. So I don't know that I have coaching for each one of you where to apply your time and talents, but I know you should wrestle with that, right? Because I wrestle with, for my company also, and I'll get back to your real question, right? So for my company, it really is where we want to spend time that we can have an enduring business, and we can employ people, and they can get married, they can have a house, they can have a truck, they can go home and enjoy that they did something good today. So first is an enduring business that can go on and people want to be part of, because it's life, right? It's what we do. The second one is that they should enjoy some satisfaction at work, right? So you paint the bigger picture a little bit, and you hear me talk, well, this person now has a better life. So the machine you made people in the factory go home safe that night. Now come to work and design a machine. Instead of just come put in 8 hours and get my project done on time so my project manager doesn't yell at me, now I'm working to make that person in that factory up the road's life better. It's a different purpose, right? So again, my job, my influence that I can have inside my company is wired around those couple of things, right? To have those people in the right spots that they like doing and to feel purpose and satisfied every day and when they go home at night. Because if you do that, it'll work.
But
right?
also to share that story that you're doing that
Yeah.
in the bus trips.
Yeah.
I mean, because really, if all of a sudden people are saying, "Oh, well, wait a second, what do you mean a group of 7th graders went to mission?
Yeah.
Well, why aren't they coming over here?
Yeah.
I mean, start get some of that going."
Yeah.
Are you covering the cost for those bus trips?
No, the schools are doing it as field trips. Some teacher
gotcha.
decided. It is hard to get the teachers to realize they could even ask.
Yeah.
We have to kind of go proactively and say, no, it's okay, please come.
And it,
Right?
it is difficult. Mary Bruce is my employee. We've talked before. The most expensive thing is moving kids from one place to the other.
And you got to get permission slips, and you got right.
It's a hassle.
It's a hassle, right?
This is
Well,
like,
Scott, everyone has a role to play, clearly, in the organization. And there's so much to tell in terms of the opportunity around manufacturing. And there is clearly, and I don't know what the Michigan numbers are, but what is the average, just a quick kind of point, do you know the average number, like salary that someone in manufacturing is making here?
Oh boy, I think it's changing so fast. It's going to be a fluid answer for sure. But if you just see billboards on the road, it's the $18 to $20 an hour to come do this all day, right? And that's
So
not.
that's on the floor level.
Yeah, and that's when again it's what is manufacturing question, right? But yeah, no, in the factory floors, show up every day. We'll get you $20 an hour.
And like that's starting.
Yeah, that's $20 an hour.
There's like, for example, Bentler Automotive at one point in time was giving $10,000 sign-on bonuses for like engineers. I mean,
Yeah, so-
it varies. I mean, JBS Foods, which is a food processing manufacturer here, $34 an hour. I mean,
That's a huge number.
It is, yeah.
Because when you think, what is the bridge to the middle class? The bridge is somewhere around $26 an hour, maybe a little bit more now. That, when you look at retail, the service industry, it is nowhere near that. And, so everyone has a role to play, and it's amazing. Kudos to you. You guys are really doing a lot of great things. When you think about the influence, and something we talked about a lot was you do have people here on the floor, and one of the things that the data and the studies are showing us in terms of, it's about trust. And if you're going to look at trust, one of the things when you look at people who they trust the most, they actually trust people just like themselves who played those roles or those same situations, and they're looking for that social proof. And they're gonna, but you have a role to play as a leader, as setting a culture, but to the extent of increasingly you're seeing you have to really tell the stories of the people who've been through that journey. And I think there's a huge opportunity for you to tell that story through them and their journey. They're gonna believe that peer that came here through that college program to work here, and they may be your most effective tool you can use. And then they'll really believe the leaders of the company, the counselors and things of that nature. So it's such a big job. Everybody has a role to play. The data we talked about this, the data may not necessarily be as convincing as the story from someone. They see that, wow, that person's just like me. Like, I was in that situation, depressed, didn't know how to do it. I got my technical degree. I had a program that had a good mentorship and apprenticeship program. So, so when we kind of look at the who, the what, the why, and influence, it's really about telling those stories and getting it to the people that, they can truly see themselves in that story. So I see this as an amazing story in progress, and kudos to everybody here for the hard work you're doing.
Yeah, I think the trust is a word you bring up, and I don't take it lightly. I think it's all woven throughout success, right, is the other term of success, right? You want to tell the stories of success and have people mimic it and copy and then get at the root of what it is, and quite often it will be some level of trust that was made and formed and not broken. And then the other times where things didn't go right, I think are just as important to talk about too, right? I did this and it didn't work, and it's because I trusted this person and it didn't work out, and it's okay, and I didn't give up, right? You have perseverance stories are just as much success too, right? And I think there's a balance there, and quite often it will come down to some kind of trust that was either upheld and placed properly or placed improperly, right? And
there's a lot of great logic to working in manufacturing, you know, as you look at the growth opportunity, but we lose people based on how they're meant to feel, more than anything.
so I was telling Sammy this story because I think it's a nice, again, influence on the people working in manufacturing, in production, right? When they go home at night, and I will see somebody somewhere, and they'll say, "Man, I worked all day, and with robots." They didn't. They picked a part up and put it back and forth all day. But they went home. They didn't tell me they put 1,600 and their quota was 1,500 today. They don't care. But they do. Hey, I got to work at the machine with the robots today all day. Right? Because it feels different to them. Even though they're measurable, if they can hit 1,500, they get paid. If they get 1,600, they get a bonus. There's something like that, and their ownership believes that's driving them to feel good when they go home at night or not, but it's not.
Talking about like the difference in motivation.
Yeah, correct, right? This is another place to people in success again go home at night feeling well. What'd you do? Not one is going home telling their wife I made 1,550 parts today, and I only had to make 1,520, and 30 were bad. No, they don't quote that, but that's what's on the wall. That's the measurable that their boss is holding them to, but not one was going home bragging about that.
The other side of that coin is if they don't enjoy that leadership, you get that feeling in the pit of your gut Sunday where you're laying in your bed,
Yeah.
crap, I have to go in tomorrow. And then you wake up Monday and you're still like, crap, I have to go in tomorrow, tomorrow. And you get that pit because you know that you just don't want to be there, but you have to be there because it's what pays the bills.
Yes, work may very well be a have to, and that's life too, right? But
I also think in West Michigan too, I think we have to bring up like Gentex and the story of Gentex because they've been doing such magnificent things to help balance work and life. They're onboarding outdoor discovery center daycare on site, so to make it easier for parents to get to their job, fulfill their job, also fulfill the needs and I was going to use the term mom guilt, but like the needs of their child to be somewhere safe and and so they also just implemented an entire shift that is Spanish speaking. So everywhere from like on the floor up to whoever they could need to talk to in leadership, HR, project management, there's always somebody that is speaking Spanish because they are all Spanish as a first language team members, and it was such a barrier before. So the sense of belonging was just not there. And when you have a company like Gentex, which is hiring like crazy here, you have to serve the people where they are. And so like there's really magnificent stories about jobs in manufacturing here in West Michigan that are like, please come here, and actually we're gonna make it easy for you because you won't have to worry about not having a place for your child to be. They're right next door in the care center with highly qualified people to care for them, and we're gonna take care of it for you.
So to pick on that though, right? It's impossible to measure. You can't implement it and measure the results, but you can do the hard work and see the results. It's very obvious, but you can't measure it, right? And you can't report it in your quarterly earnings, and you can't, right? So it's a harder thing, and that's why I think some of that ability to influence those softer things and make those softer things really important instead of the things that are measurable and the things that your boss is telling you are important. There's a lot, really, usually the most important things can't be measured.
The same thing with FIRST Robotics, right? You can't measure investing in a sophomore in high school who's 15 years old.
Right.
Saying that, but when you have the stories, when you come back 16 years later and say, hey.
Yeah, it is obvious.
You know, it's very
It's obvious.
So what did you mean with the not being able to measure that it's contributing to better growth within the company? Wouldn't the fact that if you didn't have this before and growth was here, and now that you have this and growth is here, doesn't that mean that isn't that the measurement? Doesn't that mean they're
which
equal?
variable? You know,
Right,
it's not
which
directly
variable was
measurable. You're changing lots.
Who had it on their key measures and getting a bonus for that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because quite often that's what it comes down to, right? That's why you'll see all these other incentive things being made important, because I can exactly tell somebody, here's your key measure. If you hit this, you'll get a bonus. And they'll do that. That's what they'll do. It may not be the most important thing, it probably is not, but
So is it attract, develop, and retain as a kind of a high level measure? And then in that develop and retain, you know, Sammy, forgive me for this, so, you know, there's, what does 22-year-old Sammy want is gonna be different to what 32-year-old Sammy wants, that 42-year-old Sammy wants. And to the extent that we also have to reconcile with the way we want to work against the realities of manufacturing, you know, that's just kind of where the hard work, you know, comes in.
Yep.
And, you know, so you kind of have to attract, develop, and, you know, retain. I think those are great measures. I find it very interesting. We're in an automation-based company where, you know, obviously we can find, to what extent do we believe we want to free humanity from repetitive work, and which is, I think we'd all agree, is a good thing to do. But it's also a dynamic in the business that, you know, these are also great places to work for the roles that require, you know, high technical, cognitive skill, people skills. But there's just so much work to do for everyone. But I do think sometimes you got to break things down to the simple. Are you just putting in the work? Are you attracting the talent? Are you retaining it? And to what extent that you can get that sentiment of what people want, because the demands of how they want to work with daycare, with things like that, you know, those are all really tough balancing acts from a competitive standpoint. And, you know, essentially, you know, I don't know that the world's gotten any easier, you know, because of the demands of how we want to work and those currencies that people currently have and the places they can go. I just saw a machine shop building pretty significant components for the Kuiper satellite.
Yep.
It's a major multi-million-dollar contract. And they just had engineers, they just wanted to go home.
so you hit the three buzzwords. What did you say? Attract, develop, and retain. But I think just listening and caring
Yeah.
is at the root of that. But again, you cannot measure it, but that's how you're going to do those things. And I think it's lost in leadership and management. It's beat out of you, quite honestly, right? That the best way to do it is to put the key measures and to hold people accountable and to drive improvements. Of course, that's a necessary part of business, but it's not the magic, right? So that magic is to care about your employees and listen to them, because they will change. If you want to retain them, it's gonna be different 22 to 32, right? And it's not just a systematic thing within your company or even the huge manufacturing companies. Usually you'll find those successful initiatives were started by somebody who said, hey, let's try this, right? It wasn't on anybody's key measurables to do this. They did it, and all of a sudden it was working, and someone said to keep doing more of that.
Well, that's the
Right?
thing, especially for this group, we have to realize some things are immeasurable.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I walked over to Josh beforehand, and you know, he just looks up and he says, "Hey, thanks for all your videos. I couldn't have got through a PLC class without it." Now,
Yeah.
this is only my second time ever coming to Michigan, and I happen to run into somebody that says that, you know.
Wait,
and
Josh?
Yes.
Awesome.
And
That's
so-
amazing.
I mean,
didn't even know that
now
happened.
I did this. I didn't get paid by mission.
Well, maybe.
Talking to the right guy.
If you're struggling with Josh, I know what class you can go to. But really, I mean, that's what we have to do. Now, even then, that's not helping us recruit. This guy was already in the stream.
Yeah.
He was in an
Yeah.
engineering program by
Yeah.
the time
Yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know.
But, and, you know, those are the, the stories, we've talked a lot about this stories, sharing them, and I was asked by someone I know that was teaching grade 7 and 8 and wanted me to come in and talk, and I said, well, grade 7 and 8, they don't want to see me, right? So one of my clients, there was a young man who was 19, 20, and so I asked another teacher friend, and I said, okay, what are grade 7, tell me about, because I don't know what grade 7 and 8's like, and he said, you know what they're going to want to know is, they want to know money, right?
Yeah.
So I said to him, okay. He goes, oh, yeah. And he has this great story. I mean, I couldn't have primed him better, because he got up there and he talked about how at like 17, 18, he bought a car. All the kids in this grade 7, 8 auditorium, they're like, and it wasn't just any car, it was a cool car. It's the one from one of those movies, anyways.
Yeah.
One of those fancy movies. And so my role then became more the question. I was asking questions, and, you know, I talked a little bit about marketing, but it was really his story. And we were talking about busing kids. That could cost a lot, but it's a lot easier if take one person and drop them into. And I think that's the other opportunity is to take young people, some of these young people, take them into the schools, because often they're looking for someone to like, hey, will you come in and talk to our kids and he came in, he was kind of a little bit disheveled, a little perfect, because he had the baseball cap backwards. But I was like, the kids loved him, right? Because they could identify he wasn't perfect. And I just thought I couldn't have planned this better. But I think that's
how to influence people is to gain their trust.
Yeah.
Set a goal that they want to be like this person or not like that person, right? But I think it is. You have to relate somehow. Have some connection.
And his story was that he really was good at school and everything, but he wanted to work with his hands. So his story, he shared this story, and that's what resonated. And I thought, that's really important as we've been talking the last little while. Like if we could share more of that it's how to make manufacturing cool, because other industries have done it, other places have done it, and we have to really show, not tell, right?
Yeah.
Well, look at all the network channels. Like you have your cooking shows. So now there's a lot of people that are interested in culinary arts.
Yep.
So where's
Metal Shop
Yeah.
Masters, man.
yeah, right?
The Bear.
Yeah.
And Battle Box. I love that show.
Well, and I always tell people my daughter's a surgical nurse because of Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And how it's made and all those, right?
yeah. And the thing is with like getting funding, this is where I get irritated with some manufacturers, because getting funding for kids to get bused somewhere, yes, it might be expensive to an individual, but like a major brand company that's making billions of dollars, it's like $5. I'm just throwing a number out there.
Yeah.
And that's why I like LinkedIn so much, because when IMTS, the high school that I graduated from, I asked the kids, do you want to go to IMTS? What is that? Didn't even know what it is. Explained it to them. Yes, we want to go. Okay, how do we get there? And the head of the program was like, we don't have this in our budget. We would need to get sponsorship or something. So I went on LinkedIn, and a woman's like, I'll sponsor the cost for the bus.
And she's
Independent person.
not
So they
even
got there.
from your state.
No, not even for she just liked what I was doing with Neiman. So I just feel like if companies could do that with the schools in their community and just bus kids out to the trade shows that are close to them, so it's not a far driving distance.
Yeah, I think how to grow your influence is one of those things, right? If you're going to have an influence, have it on the people, but to enable it, it's a different party you have to go to, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard for this group, but this other group can do that like that, right?
Yeah.
So part of your influence magic could be these connections, right? And you have to realize, flip your hat around and put on the other hat, because I got to go talk to these guys, and I need 3 parties involved here to be successful, and you're going to have to be the matchmaker. It's okay, right? It's hard work.
It's the same thing what Jordan did. So Jordan's she taught a soldering class on Saturday. They needed all this equipment and stuff, so she reached out to her LinkedIn. I need funding for it. And she got everything paid for from people on LinkedIn that believed in the mission, which is cool. So
You don't get
that's
what-
really key.
Yeah.
You have to get people believing in it. Because
Right.
if they don't, when they're looking at their costs,
Yeah.
they're not going to pay for it because they don't see the value. And until they see the value, and
School
understand
teachers don't even know they can allowed to bring kids
Yeah.
here, right?
Right.
Let alone who to ask. So you have to play these connector games. It's another kind of influence, right? You have circles of influence, and you can draw Venn diagrams, and you can do all this, but it is what you're doing, and you just want your circles to grow, right?
And we can't depend on the school teachers or even the guidance counselors. We do have to make this happen.
Yeah.
They,
Yep.
I mean, really, they do get everything dumped on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
so the
even-
guidance counselors, I know the college people. That's where they're getting their info
Yeah.
from, and they're really just passing stuff along.
Yeah.
And you have to make it
Get
easy
into
for
it.
them.
Yeah.
Like, they've already got too much on their plate,
Yeah.
so make it easy for them to say, yes, of course we'll send our kids to check it out.
Yeah.
Of course we want you here to talk to people.
But do something different's risky too, right?
What excites me about this group, right? Some of us have been talking about like in the past, where we went to school and didn't have options, but like we're kind of holding the megaphone, whether up to our own mouth or up to companies like Mission or others to like help them like get this snowball bigger running down the hill. So I'm excited for what we're all doing. We have our own little niche and stuff. That's pretty
I think
powerful.
that, so I want to make sure we hit all of these, and we're going to run out of time, of course, as usual, but I think another question that I had, and it's hard to answer, is what is manufacturing, right? We manufacture stuff here because we produce a thing and it goes out the door, right? So you could say manufacturing. Manufacturing could be the CNC shops and the weld shops. It can be a 3D printer shop, right? Or it's those buildings full of thousands of people, 3 shifts a day, producing parts, right? And there's different approaches, and I think we have to be clear again where you want to influence and what, right? How you go about trying to change the shop floor at Gentex versus change who wants to come to work for me is quite different messaging, and that, right? You can't do it all, right? So I think you need to really drill down when you say a maven of manufacturing or the manufacturing masterminds, whatever, right? You have to, at least in your own mind, come to some narrowing down, because otherwise you'll just get lost, right? So I think there's another place individually to do, but even when you have events, define what exactly we're going to hone in on today, because otherwise you'll talk yourselves in circles even, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
So I just challenge you to do that, right? Because I think it does matter how you make messages. There's not many people on the shop floor at Gentex are using LinkedIn at all, just for the record.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? They're not.
Well, neither are high school students.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On TikTok though.
Yeah.
TikTok. Great.
Yep. Yeah. So how to be cool to them and what message they need is different than, right? So I know you work on that, but I think it's again, the definition of manufacturing, you look it up, it's not clear. And it's unclear where each one of you, or even where I fit, quite honestly, when I wrestle with that, right? But I know what we do, and we do it well, and we like it, okay, but am I a manufacturer, right? We had that question, like, I think so, but actually no, but yes, but
Got a little.
depends what the definition of the word is, right?
Manufacture equipment.
Am I? Yeah, I do. I have a product, right? I sell a product, right? I produce things, but yeah, so no, I think there's a whole thing there, and I don't have a good answer for that. But again, I think you want a little fireside, candid conversation. I think you guys do need to clarify and make sure you're talking to your message to the right people and not mixing them up, right? Because it'll get lost otherwise, right? So then the last topic I threw up there real fast, and it's again, well, it's a change from what we've been talking about, right? I really enjoy this so far, but part of your notes, right? You got those notes, what all you want to learn, where you want to do. A lot of it was around monetization and can I do this full time, and how do I make a living out of this, right? You individually, personally wrestling with these things, right? And I think that's actually really healthy to wrestle with, but at the same time, you got to figure out what success is. And when it becomes a monetary thing, okay, that's now business, right? So I wrote up there really fast. Business 101 is not a hobby, right? And it's not a club. You're not just getting together to hang out. If you want to make it something you can do full time, you got to approach it as a business, right? And it's a decision you'll make. You've been dabbling in it here or there. It's a hobby. I publish these things because it's kind of cool, right? I want to turn it into my own life, and I want to monetize it enough so I can do this full time because my influence should be bigger, and I love this, and it's where my passion lies. Okay, you got to go back to business 101, right? So I'll give you this, and then we'll chat, right? So my business 101 is very simple. It works for my kids since they were this big, right? You have to have a business or have money. You have to go to somebody who has a problem. I heard you mention, or you asked me earlier, what's a good customer? Somebody with a problem. So find somewhere where there's a problem. You need your lawn mowed, you need your drive walk shoveled for the snow, whatever it is. Somebody with a problem first. And then you got to convince them with enough confidence and trust that they'll reach into their pocket, take their money out, and give it to you. And then you got to deliver something to them, whatever that is, a service, a product, whatever. Mow the lawn, do whatever you want. And then they got to be happy enough to have you do it again. Right? This is business 101. If you don't do those things, you don't have a business. You have a hobby, you have a club, you have a service or a passion or whatever you want. It's okay. And you should have those other things too. But if you want a business, you got to be able to find people willing to reach in their pocket and give you their money. Create something of value to somebody who has money, right? It's an important part of this. And if you want to do this, you can't just create fun value. You got to create value to somebody who has money that solves a problem they need solved and they're willing to pay for, and then you got to deliver it well enough, they want to do more. That's business 101, Lindemann style, right? So I think it's important that you think about that as you're on this retreat, trying to decide how can you, should you, why would I, can I or not monetize this in my life. Run it through some of those tests, right? Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yep, let's chat. That wasn't meant to be a downer, by the way. That's just me telling you how it works, right? Yeah.
The monetization you do be an exchange of services where I give you A, you give me A, and then we both get something. Would that still be business, or because I'm not getting the money, it wouldn't be business?
I don't know. You can define probably the exchange criteria however you like, but
Yeah, it's a fundamental,
Yeah.
there's a really good framework called a business model generation. And it's a really good way to like back out into what you're doing as a creator and an influencer, and it's these exact same points. What's the problem in the market you're solving? What are the customer segments? So when we break out the pan industry issues related to manufacturing, you may want to solve for women, elevating, the power and potential of women in manufacturing. You may want to address the skilled labor gap. You might want to address changing perceptions. Whatever that track is really important. And then you have to get to your value proposition. So as you grow as a creator, as an influencer, you got to look at your value propositions that you're going to offer, and that could be consulting. Jake, you're doing a great job. You do free consulting down there around, some of those pods and those areas around how you're going to tell the story of what was going on in that clipper. And how to maybe this would be get more attention if we talked about like how many sensors are we counting and just some of like the human dynamics around engagement. But everyone here like it's not a downer. It's actually the exciting part where you can actually use established frameworks by Strategizer or business model generation and go. They give you a canvas. You just write it all out, and now here's your channel. Who are the partners you're going to work with, and what are the technologies and software you need to be an influencer, and you can map all of that out, and you can really have a great business model that you can run your organization or yourself by if you're a solopreneur. So these are all really good things, and Scott, I think you did a great job just to break down some of the things thematically here. But these are all folks who literally are making viable careers out of telling the stories of manufacturers, and they're out there doing it because I think the other thing that you mentioned, like how do you get these constituencies mobilized? And I think what I think you could probably see a little bit clearer is that these folks are very good at figuring out people who also believe what you believe, the why. Like I believe that students should go to IMTS. I believe I should donate because I believe that you believe in that why around paying for the bus. So I think we can do it because I think it's the way we're going to get to these constituencies and get that mobilization and activation is going to be through, using like the superpowers of connectivity and influence and networking and passion. So it's been a while since I've been in a room with this many passionate people about manufacturing, and they're already moving the world. Like they're already making real impacts and bringing people right to these shop floors.
Places, that's
Can we give it up for Scott?
Let's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, no thanks.